I am very excited to meet you all electronically. Well, I wish I could meet you all, but I'm very excited to be recording this video for you guys. Miss Hovenkamp actually reached out to me and asked me to make a video to answer some of your questions about what my story has been, what my time at Westwood was like, my time at the University of Texas, some of my time in the private sector and business after that, and then now in my current program as a JD MBA student at Harvard. And I also am very excited to take this opportunity to tell you guys a few of the lessons that I've learned from those experiences as well, and hopefully answer some of the questions that you asked, but then also give you guys some overarching thematic lessons maybe that you didn't ask for, but that I think are still very, very important, and that I think you guys were hinting at in a lot of your questions. And so I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Bhargav Srinivasan. I graduated Westwood in 2008. So I am 7 years out, which feels like a long time. It feels like just yesterday, and I still remember a lot of my classes and extracurriculars and friends from Westwood. And funny enough, I still keep in touch with a lot of them. In fact, 2 of them are at Harvard Law with me right now. And if any of you have missed signs, please tell her I said hi. But that's the common experience that we share. And so I'm very, very excited to be talking to you guys, a bunch of students at Westwood. And I'll start by saying that I think you guys are already ahead of the game by taking principles of business and accounting in high school, which neither of which were classes, nor economics were classes that I took until college. And if I can look back right now and give myself some advice, when I was in high school, I would really encourage myself to do those things in high school. And so I'm really proud of you guys, and you guys should be really proud of yourselves for taking a really big proactive step in planning for your futures and taking some really practical high school classes. But let me get to it. I think I wanted to start off by saying 4 quick lessons that I hope you guys take away from this video. If you don't remember my personal experiences, my stories, or even my name, I hope you remember these 4 lessons. And so it's kind of funny because in business, we have this acronym or this mnemonic device for 4 very important parts of business called the 4 Ps, which are product, price, placement, and promotion. And that's about how you run a business and what you do with your product, and how you actually price it, promote it, and place it for your customers. Funny enough, my lessons are also 4 Ps. So here they are. Number 1 is pursue the things that give you energy and at which you are good. And I'll go into that in depth and how I think I've done that and how I think you guys can do that. Number 2 is proactively gather information, introspect, and pivot. Be very proactive about that. Always be gathering information, reading, learning, asking people different questions about what they do, trying to understand whether you might like what they do. I think you guys are already doing that right now. And then introspect on it, and then pivot if you need to change, and if somehow the thing that you thought you were interested in last year is no longer the thing you're interested in this year, that's okay. The 3rd lesson is always maintain a positive attitude. And in fact, maintain the most positive attitude that you can. Challenge yourself among your peers to be the most positive person that you can. I know that Westwood especially, but high school in general, is very hard, and there are a lot of classes. And in fact, if you ask me, I don't think it gets much harder than Westwood. College was easier for me so far, knock on wood. The JD MBA program has been a little bit easier for me than Westwood, so that's the good news. The good news is I don't think it's much harder than high school. But if you can maintain a positive attitude during even those really tough times, it goes a really long way. 1, because you're able to convince others that you're in the right place, you're doing all the right things, and people can see that you really like what you're doing, and that just attracts people around you, and great things happen when you're an attractive personality. And then 2, it almost makes you self-convinced. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you wake up every morning and say, hey, I really like this A-Push reading, or I really like this world history reading that I'm doing, instead of complaining to yourself about, oh, how it's 20 pages every night and it's too much reading. You yourself will begin to like it. A lot of psychological tests have shown that if you tell yourself you like something, you will eventually become fond of it. And then the final P is prior preparation is really, really important. And I'm going to steal a line from Tony Robbins, which is prior preparation prevents poor performance. So again, those 4 lessons are: pursue the things that give you energy and which you're good at. 2, proactively gather information, introspect, and pivot. 3, maintain a positive attitude. And 4, always have prior preparation. So I'll tell you a little bit about my story. You guys asked a lot of really good questions, a lot of personal questions, which I am totally open to, and I'm actually happy you guys asked, because I know that when you're in high school and you're not sure what kind of paths exist after college, a lot of what you might be interested in is what it takes and what are the right steps and what can you do to really prepare yourself. So I'm happy to share that. So let me tell you a little bit about myself personally. I am a huge nerd. I love philosophy and history and math, but I'm also really nerdy about my hobbies outside of like academic subjects. So for example, I like the NBA and table tennis, and I get really, really passionate about these things and really involved with these things. So this is part of the proactivity and just being positive and bringing energy to whatever you do. So for example, I'm in charge of a Facebook group called NBA Nerds and Quant Jocks, which is a bunch of us that just love the NBA and also love math and analytics and try to apply statistics to analyzing the NBA and predicting, who's going to win, the championship, or which players are going to have the best seasons and things like that. And then with table tennis, I actually randomly had an opportunity to help a startup down in Austin about a year and a half ago that was doing some bespoke table tennis work. So they were a consumer goods startup called Uberpong. You can check them out at uberpong.com, uberpong.com, and they make custom-made table tennis paddles. And I started to give them business advice. So I started to combine my this career skill set, my business skill set with some of my interests. I'm also really interested in policy, interested in technology. You asked a lot of really specific questions, so I'll go ahead and answer them. What was my upbringing like? It was pretty normal. I grew up in Dallas/Austin, was a single child, an only child, and was pretty involved throughout my time as far back as I can remember. I just remember enjoying doing things outside of the classroom, whether it was even in middle school, running kind of charity events for cancer awareness and cancer research, to kind of doing a peer support program, to doing something called Teen Court when I was in middle school. You guys asked, while I was growing up in elementary, middle school, did I have any older siblings that advised me? And the answer is no, I was an only child, but I did have the great support of my parents, and I know you guys all have great parents as well that probably encourage you to be in this class, so definitely don't take them for granted. They're a source of wisdom, as are many of your peers, your upperclassmen. I would definitely take advantage of them. Somebody asked, do I speak other languages? I do. I spoke Spanish really well at one point when I was at Westwood, and I would urge you guys to continue to use that even after you stop taking whatever language you're taking at Westwood. And then I also speak Tamil occasionally at home. So definitely kind of proficient in at least English. Have a very good working knowledge of how to speak in Tamil, and then kind of a very basic knowledge of Spanish. So yeah, then I came to high school, and you guys had some really pointy questions about what my high school experience was like. And I'll just say this, I think my high school experience was really well balanced. I was in the IB program, but then I was also very involved in extracurriculars outside of high school, and that's really what I enjoyed about Westwood. The thing that I was most involved with was the debate team. I was a cross-ex debater, and almost every weekend or every other weekend was going out to tournaments, and invested a lot of time into that, did debate for all 4 years, and kind of made that my high school career. It was like my high school sport, so if any of you play sports or do band or do something really full-time outside of school, that's what that was like for me. But I was also involved in Junior Statesmen of America, Model United Nations, and then on the side I did some other organizations like Mu Alpha Theta, NHS, National Spanish Honor Society, and then the IB Student Organization. Some of you guys asked if I was in the top 10%. Yes, I was in, I think I graduated around the top 5%, but to be very honest with you, even though that was 7 years ago, nobody really cares about it once you get to college. It's a blank slate. Nobody ever asks you what your high school GPA or class rank was. But that's not to say it's not important. You definitely want to position yourself in the best place to get into the college that you want to get into. And you want to develop good habits at a young age. You want to be able to go to college with the confidence that you know that if you put your mind to something, you can get kind of the class rank or the GPA that you want out of that effort. So I would definitely invest in that. I was an IB. One of you asked what my SAT score was. I believe it was a 2300. But again, I don't think you need that to get to where you're going. I think the best and most impressive college students that I know were really well-rounded and did a lot in their community, did a lot to prove that they were leaders, and then they were also pushing themselves constantly in class. So this continues along the theme of pursuing things that give you energy and at which you're good. So for example, for me, debate was really the one thing in high school that I loved and gave me a lot of energy. And it was about doing research. It was about debating in 2-hour rounds. And both of those things really got me hyped up. I felt good about myself. I felt like I was working on my public speaking skills, but then also my critical thinking skills. And I just fell in love with the community that it gave me. And then I also was good at it. And so that was actually one of the things that I would say, even though I invested so much time in debate outside of class, it was one of the things that actually probably helped me do better in class than if I had not done debate, because I was getting so much energy out of it that spilled over into my academics and into classes and into having the energy to go do homework, as opposed to being bored and not really having the thing that makes you passionate and gives you energy to do some of the things that maybe you're not as passionate about. So yeah, that was my high school experience. I, at the time, like many of you, resented Westwood a little bit for being such a pressure cooker. And if I could go back and give myself a little bit of advice, the number one thing that I would give myself advice on is just to let go a little bit of worrying so much about the outcome, about the grades, and just putting in the effort. And I think the things that stick with me and the things that impacted me from when I was in high school were debate, history classes, English classes, theory of knowledge, just a lot of the ways of thinking that I learned, and the friends that I made, and some of the teachers that I keep in touch with to this day, and not the grades and not the SAT score. And those things don't have an impact on my life anymore. And so I would urge you guys to focus on what you know is the most important thing, which is the process. So then, obviously, I went to college. You guys had a number of questions about my college experience. So the first one was, where did I apply to college? So funny enough, I applied to 10 schools, of which 9 were in the Northeast, and UT was my backup school, to be very, very honest with you guys. And it was the school that I thought, I would go to if I didn't get in anywhere else. I ended up getting into a few other good schools in the Northeast. But the reason that I chose UT is because I got into 2 programs at UT, the Business Honors Program and the Plan 2 Honors Program. And the Business Honors Program is kind of an extension of what you guys are doing right now. You learn the fundamentals of business across accounting, statistics, finance, marketing, operations, strategy, management, organizational behavior, and you learn how to apply that to both running a business and maybe starting your own business, or just being a consultant, or being a specialist within one of those fields. And then the Plan 2 Honors Program was a liberal arts honors program where you took a year of literature, a year of philosophy, a year of courses in your own pursuits, and then you had to write a thesis your senior year. And the goal of the Plan 2 Honors Program was really to bring back the Renaissance education, which is something I really loved, as you guys can tell. I didn't want to just do business. I wanted to also pursue liberal arts and do a lot of stuff with liberal arts. And so I was really kind of happy that I got into both of these programs, and they were small. And the thing about that for me was I was worried that at UT I might get lost in, the huge campus of 39,000 undergraduates, but I was confident that these two programs would give me a really small community, and also I had a much lower cost of attendance at UT. Of course, I think tuition for the 4 years was $40,000, and then at that time, I got a lot of scholarships to help me pay for that, and then I actually had internship money for my college experiences that helped me pay for my rent and housing. So I actually put myself through college. Didn't really have to rely on parental funding that much, and frankly, even if I did a little bit, I could easily pay them back now, and that was important to me, and that was something that I appreciated. And I'll tell you this: I think so many students that end up going to UT with the mindset that I did, which is maybe that it's a backup school, end up loving it. And I will tell you this: 10 out of 10 on my experience when it comes to the University of Texas. I loved it, hook 'em horns. Our football team is not doing so well right now, but there are a lot of things that I could get into there in terms of officiating and whatnot. But the great thing about UT is you get that. You get the amazing benefits of a large school, but then you also get kind of these smaller programs that can really make it feel like home. And so I loved it. I love the city of Austin. And frankly, once you get to UT, you get to explore a lot more of Austin than you do when you are in a suburb, like most of you are right now. Some of the things that I did at UT that made it really great outside of class were I got involved with the Student Senate, which is kind of the academic student body, and represented the University of Texas in a lot of issues at the governor's office, the Texas Higher Educating Coordinating Board, and try to preserve a lot of the great things about UT and enhance a lot of the student programs at UT as well. I was involved with a lot of different organizations, again, like I was in high school. I was involved with the Undergraduate Business Council, which was the student body of the business school, and put on a lot of really great events, got to meet some really cool VIPs. One of the event series that we did was called the VIP Speaker Series, where we hosted and got to meet, as a result of being on the committee, a lot of different CEOs. So I got to meet John Mackey, the CEO of Whole Foods, Indra Nooyi, the CEO of Pepsi, A.G. Lafley, CEO of Procter & Gamble, the CEO of Southwest Airlines and founder of Southwest Airlines, Herb Kelleher, the CEO of Walmart, I'm forgetting his name right now, I think it was Lee Scott, and then Michael Dell, so some really cool names, and then also got to be part of a really good community. I didn't join a fraternity. I wasn't very interested in that. But the Business Council gave me a really strong sense of community, and to this day, a lot of my best friends were from that organization. I was also on the President's Student Advisory Committee, so I was advising the university president on student issues. I was part of something called DemTex, and by the way, the reason I'm outlining a lot of these organizations is so that if any of you go to UT, or even if you don't go to UT, you kind of have a sense of the different types of activities you can get involved with, and really the opportunities are endless, and frankly, even if they don't exist, you can make them. I got involved with something called DemTex, which is Democratic Courses in Texas, where students taught other students. So I actually taught a class at UT for college credit, which was pretty phenomenal on the TV show Lost. If anyone is old enough to remember that TV show or watch that TV show, it was my favorite TV show of all time, and I got to teach a class on it called Power, Ethics, and Destiny on Lost. And so basically it was me and 6 or 7 of my friends getting together every week, once a week, and watching a bunch of videos of Lost in my bedroom and getting college credit out of it. But we did have a serious class behind it, but we also had a lot of fun. And then I started a few organizations at the University of Texas. I started a management consulting association, so that we could help juniors that were interested in management consulting as a career prepare for that. And I'm happy to get into what that is a little bit later. I started a tuition and budget advisory committee for the dean, and I started kind of a student curriculum committee that provided curriculum input to kind of the Bachelor's of Business Administration, the BBA degree that McCombs gives its students. And so, as you can tell, I continue to do things that I was really passionate about. And you've probably noticed by now that I've been speaking for a while and I haven't mentioned anything about careers. And I think that's because I really want to drive home that first lesson that I learned, which is all I did was I pursued things that gave me energy, and I pursued things that I thought I was good at. And those were the most important things that I had to do. And I maintained a positive attitude throughout it. And the way that I balanced and juggled all these things was by constantly making sure that I was always prepared. Prior preparation prevents poor performance. But let's get to kind of what you guys are interested in, which is all this career stuff. And so, I was a good career-minded business student as well in college. And so that second piece of advice that I gave you to proactively gather information, introspect, and pivot was definitely something that I had to do in college. And to be frank with you, I wasn't good at it as a freshman. So probably until the age of 19, I didn't really take my career seriously at all. So you guys should feel like you're ahead of the curve, and definitely give yourself a pat on the back for even caring at this point in time. That's awesome, and you should continue to do that. So what I did was I reached out to friends through the Undergraduate Business Council, which was the organization I was telling you I was very involved with, and found an opportunity to get involved in a nonprofit in East Austin called the Eastside Community Connection. Maybe some of you guys have heard of it. And I reached out to do a pro bono, meaning for free, internship for them, unpaid during the semester, during my second semester of my sophomore year, where I was going to be an accounting intern for them and help them move to a system called QuickBooks for nonprofits, and basically take their accounting system from paper accounting to digital accounting. And this was back in 2010. And I was still kind of baffled that they didn't have a digital accounting system, but I helped do that for them. In the meantime, I got to work with a community of amazing people and help them kind of pull themselves up and educate themselves and provide themselves the basic necessities they needed to get kickstarted in life. And at the same time, I got some really tangible skills in accounting and learned how to apply what I was learning in my accounting classes to the real world. And then I used that experience, as well as a lot of the college experience I had, to apply for an internship at an investment bank my sophomore summer. So I worked at VERT Investment Group, which is a very small renewable energy investment bank down in Houston. It was a team of 8 when I was there. And basically what I did and what an investment bank does in renewable energy is help fund projects. So think about a developer who wants to build a wind farm, and he doesn't have the $100 million it's going to take to build this huge wind farm. He will come to a place like VERT, which is an investment bank, who will then go to a bunch of different investors and say, hey, we would like you guys who are rich and have a lot of money to invest in this project. And in return for giving us $100 million to invest in this project, you will become equity owners of the business, or perhaps debt owners of the business. And you'll be able to collect money in the future based on the return on your investment. So when these wind farms actually start producing energy and become profitable, you can turn that $100 million into 110 or $120 million. And obviously it's a win for the investor because they get money back, but it is risky. And it's a win for the developers because they get to build their company, and they also maintain a stake of equity in the company, and they make money. And of course, you guys know how this works, and that's part of the capitalist society that we live in which ultimately the consumer is really highly benefited from these, what we call capital markets. And so I did that for a summer. I really liked investment banking. It was something that I was definitely good at with my numbers background and finance background. But it wasn't something that gave me energy. It wasn't something that made me want to wake up every day and go work hard. Investment banking is very difficult because you work approximately, depending on where you're working, 60 to 90 hours a week. And if you do the math across 5 to 7 days, that's anywhere from 12 hours a day on the low end, which is already pretty large in terms of a number of hours that you're working, to maybe even 15, 16, 17 hours a day that you're working. And so I just wasn't motivated to do that. So I went back and recruited and got another internship at a management consulting firm called McKinsey and Company, which I did my junior year. And so for me, in between these two things, what did I do? I proactively gathered information about what are the other paths that I might like. So I literally went to the career services office and said, hey, I tried investment banking, kind of like it, don't know if I want to go back to it. It's very lucrative, but it's not something that gives me energy. And so what are the other options for me? And they laid out all the different options. And I just tried to make my best guess through gathering that information, talking to people in consulting, as to whether it would be something that gave me energy and I'd be good at. And it turned out that that internship was great. I really, really liked consulting. It was a good combination of qualitative analysis and quantitative analysis. You have to be creative to provide your clients with strategic advice because, after all, they are in the business. So, for example, if you're advising, like I did, a truck company, and a lot of the people that are high up in the truck company have been in the trucking business for 30 years, and you're a 21-year-old and you have no idea about the trucking business, how are you supposed to give them advice? And the answer is you're trained in a way of problem solving and qualitative thinking that we call structured thinking or structured problem solving that is difficult. And you're providing that sort of value to the company. So you're almost a specialist in business. So even though they might be a specialist in the industry, you're a specialist in the business function. And that's a really awesome thing to be. I really enjoyed it. But I came back and recruited with another consulting firm and fell in love with them. Really, really liked the partners and managers that I met through the interview process, and that was Bain and Company, where I've worked for the last 3 years until I joined the JD MBA program here at Harvard. And I absolutely love my experience at Bain. One of the great things about Bain was that I got to pursue a lot of my passions inside work and outside work. So Bain actually let me leave for 6 months to do what they call an externship, which is basically an internship, but you're still committed to come back and work at Bain after you're done, with a nonprofit consulting group. So I went and did some nonprofit consulting, really got to get close to kind of some of the mission-driven aspects of consulting and focus on a lot of things that I care about, like poverty alleviation, fighting climate change, providing healthcare to folks that need it. And I got to use my business skills for some really good causes, and I was really happy about that. And I got to learn a lot as well about what I might want to do in the nonprofit or public sectors later on. And then I came back to Bain, and I rounded out my tenure. And I basically decided to apply to the JD MBA program. So that gets me to kind of what you guys, the fourth category of what you guys were asking questions about, which is what am I doing here and why am I at the JD MBA program and why did I want to go back to school? And so the really simple answer to that is school is fun, for me at least. Work is awesome and you get to make money. I'm definitely losing money right now, which is not good, but I really love school and I like learning. I always wanted to be in law school from the time that I was a debater in high school. And study the law, study how to think like a lawyer, how to think about the policy ramifications of what is good and bad law. And ultimately, I hope to use that in conjunction with the MBA to drive real social good. And very broadly, my mission is to try and bridge the gap between profit and purpose. And that's in a field called social enterprise. So my goal is to help organizations realize that they don't have to be purely profit motivated, as many companies in kind of the public markets are, but they also don't have to be purely impact motivated. Or if they are impact motivated, they can run like a business, and they can learn a lot from the private sector instead of just running as a typical nonprofit today might run. And so my goal is to really bridge that gap and help bring business principles to the impact space and ultimately help bridge the gap between profit and purpose so that there is no false distinction between doing well for yourself and doing good for the world. And so that's very broadly where I want to go. Some of you asked very specifically what I want to do or what target salary I want after my JD MBA, and the answer is I don't know. Frankly, if I were targeting only salary, and I hope you guys take this in the right way, because it's just me being very, very blunt, I wouldn't have gone to pursue a JD MBA. I wouldn't have gone back to school. I would have just stayed at Bain and taken a promotion and gotten a big salary bump, or I would have jumped ship and gone to private equity or started working at a technology company. And I, in fact, did interview for private equity firms and tech companies in San Francisco. And some of those jobs are really lucrative. But I think that it's better to finish off most of your education when you're young. So when I start this JD MBA program, I'm 24 right now, and that's to be honest, on the younger side. Most people that are starting this program are 25, 26. And so it's a 4-year program, and I want to be done by the time I'm 28 so that I can go pursue what I really want to pursue and pursue my passion. And so I know I'm not answering your question, but to be honest, the answer is that I really have no target starting salary goal. I could easily see myself taking a $40,000 to $50,000 to $60,000 job to do something in public service or public interest, or a $0 job and start my own social enterprise. Or I could see myself going into private equity and taking a very lucrative job. And you guys can Google kind of the starting salary numbers on that if you're really interested in kind of the specifics there. So there was another question about where I applied and why I chose Harvard, and I'm happy to answer that. So I applied to Chicago, Stanford, the University of Pennsylvania, and Harvard. I ended up choosing Harvard because the other programs are all great. I only applied to 4 programs, which was, as you can tell, a marked difference from where I applied to high school. But the reason that I only applied to 4 programs is because I wanted to go to a place where the JD program was great and also the MBA program was great. And I ended up choosing Harvard because both programs are phenomenal. The professors and the peers were probably the 2 biggest factors. The professors here are really great, and after a month of being in law school, I can definitely attest to that, as well as the peers, some of the best and brightest peers from around the country and around the world. And then, as I mentioned, I had gone on externship for 5 or 6 months from Bain, and I'd actually come up to Boston and really liked Boston, and my best friends all live in Boston, and so that was definitely a big draw as well, location-wise. So the next question was, what did it take to get into Harvard for my JD MBA? And I'll start off, and there are some very specific questions about this, like how well do you have to do at UT? What exams do you have to take and scores do you have to get? How much work did I put into it? And I'll start off by saying I think what it takes to get in is different for different schools. It's different for different people, even for the same school. So for undergrad, it really, really is a different process. If you guys are interested in getting into the best undergraduate program that you can get into, the number one advice I would give you is, pay attention to your classes and your grades. The better your class rank, really your GPA is less consequential than your class rank, meaning how you compare relatively to your peers. The better off you are, but at the same time, they want to see that you've pushed yourself. So if you've voluntarily taken harder classes and that impacted your GPA a little bit, you could have maybe had a higher GPA, they'll give you credit for that. And they know, about the IB program and the AP program and the pre-IB or pre-AP classes. And they know about the business classes, and they know about the different extracurricular activities and which ones take up a lot of time and might impact your GPA that way. So I would continue to try and pursue things that you're passionate about, pursue things that you're good at, be a well-rounded candidate. I remember that one of my good friends was valedictorian of Westwood in my year and ended up not getting into his, top 3 or 4 choices of college, because even though he was valedictorian, Harvard, Princeton, Yale, they were all looking for candidates that were really well-rounded. And he very, wantonly decided that he didn't want to do extracurricular activities. And that was, he's an awesome guy, very, very smart guy, but I wish he had, but he ended up getting into a very good school and doing well for himself anyway. But I would tell you this, that I also had a friend who was not in the top 10% or even in the top 20%, who ended up getting into and going into Duke, and now he's getting a PhD at Duke. And that was because he was really passionate about research. Actually did research at the University of Texas as a high school student, and he was very involved, and he was a leader in his communities. And so, grades aren't everything. But I'll tell you a little bit about the JD MBA, which was the original question. So on the JD side, law school definitely cares about your college GPA quite a bit. So as close as you can keep your college GPA to a 4.0, the better off you are in terms of law school requirements. They don't say that they have a floor, but definitely you want to keep it above, I would say, a 3.5 for sure. Above a 3.8 is ideal for law school. And then you do have to take exams for law school and business school, which are the LSAT, not the GRE. By the way, somebody asked, what did you have to get on the GRE? But you have to take the LSAT, which is the law school admissions test, and the GMAT, which is the graduate management aptitude test, I believe, for business school. And so I studied hard for both of those exams. And again, you can Google kind of the different numbers it takes on those different tests to get into different schools. But the truth is that, especially for business school, which is what I know a lot of you are thinking about at least one day in the future, the grades are less important. In fact, the scores are less important. Both of them are what I would call threshold factors. So if you have a GPA that shows that you've worked hard and you've taken difficult classes and gotten somewhat good grades, they don't have to be the best. And if you took the GMAT, you don't have to get an 800 out of 800. Even if you get, a 690, you can still get into Harvard. And I think the reason that is in the business world, they're looking for leaders. So they're looking for people that are passionate, people that have demonstrated an ability to be effective and get results, and then have a vision for where they want to go and how they want to use their MBA to make an impact in the future. And then the final question was, how much work did I put into getting into Harvard? And the answer is not a lot. The answer is I actually didn't spend countless hours on my application. I did study hard to do well on the LSAT and the GMAT. But beyond that, I just wrote genuine essays. I probably spent a week to 2 weeks writing those essays. And if you think about that, that's not a long time. I remember writing my college essays and spending more than a month or 2 months. And then I got recommendations from people at work. But on another end of the spectrum, you have to build your resume. And I think the thing that all of my classmates share and that I really admire about them is their resumes and their past experiences are amazing. And if you look at it from that perspective, how hard you have to work to get in is actually quite hard and very hard, because what you want to do is you want to build a set of experiences that shows that you have put yourself in the most difficult and interesting and passionate contexts. You have taken some serious, bold, smart actions, and you have achieved positive and impressive results. And so I'll repeat that. It's context, action, results. And if you can show that across the different extracurriculars you've done, jobs or internships you've held, student organizations you've been a part of, community organizations you've been a part of, if you can show that you've done those three things, put yourself in the right context, taken the right actions, and achieved great results, that's more impressive to them than writing the very best essay or getting the very best recommendations or getting the very best GMAT. I would say all of those things have to be threshold good, but what has to be great is your story of who you are and where you want to go with that story. There were some questions about the cost of my JD MBA, which is definitely on my mind. And so some of the questions were, how do you handle it? Did you get any scholarships? And do you have any recommendations for us on how to get scholarships? And then what is your goal for starting salary? And I think I addressed that one. So what is the cost and how do you handle it? So yeah, the cost is it's pretty expensive. It is about the cost of a mortgage. And if you guys want the actual numbers, you can literally Google Harvard JD MBA cost and look up the cost yourselves. but it is expensive. Harvard doesn't do merit-based scholarships for the law school or for the business school for the first year, except in very, very exceptional cases, which are actually sponsored by outside sources. But they do need-based financial aid. So if you're coming from a background where it would help you to have a lot of aid as you embark on a JD MBA, they definitely do that. But I'm also lucky enough to have worked for 3 years and have saved some money to be able to pay for a portion of my degree myself. And then, yeah, I will be in debt as I graduate, but I think that it's totally worth it because in life, my philosophy is I want to spend on experiences and not goods. So for me, if pursuing this 4-year JD MBA and getting this set of experiences and this training and these 4 years of my life that you only get to live once means, if all that means that I have to live in a slightly smaller house before I save up money and advance in my career, that's fine. That's fine with me. And so you have to make that trade-off, and I'm not saying that's an easy trade-off to make, but once you think about it that way, even though these are pretty big numbers in terms of cost, I think it's a little bit more manageable. And so then finally, there was a very interesting, almost philosophical question that somebody asked, and I kind of got the sense that whoever asked this question might have been bewildered or frustrated or just curious. And the question was, why would you fight so hard for an education or a career when you really have no guarantee of succeeding, or you have no guarantee of success? And I think this is such a interesting and profound question because I've thought of it myself many times, which is, why am I doing this if, frankly, not be morbid, you can get hit by a car any day and that could be your last day on planet Earth. And why are you doing this? And to me, I always remind myself of a philosophical allegory called The Myth of Sisyphus by Albert Camus. So if any of you, back when I was at Westwood, the English curriculum still had The Stranger in as part of the readings that we had to read by Albert Camus, or maybe you guys are familiar with him from something else. But he talks about the myth of Sisyphus, who was a Greek myth. He was a man that was condemned to hell. And the punishment that the Greek gods gave him was that he had to roll a rock up a hill every day, and then at sunset, that rock would roll all the way back down the hill. And it is really a boulder, a very big boulder, a very heavy boulder. And he would watch it roll downhill, and then he would go down, and then the next day he would do the same thing over and over and over. And you could see the story in two ways. You could see it as it's the most cruel punishment you could give to somebody, to make them do that eternally and be condemned to this useless activity. But Camus sees it as a story of the triumph of Sisyphus's spirit. And he says Sisyphus was in control of the one thing that nobody could take away from him, which was his own agency, his own attitude. And so Sisyphus, almost as a way of sticking it to the man, sticking it to the Greek gods, said, I am going to enjoy this. I am going to do this with vigor and conviction and passion. And every day, even though the rock is going to roll back down the hill, and from a utilitarian perspective, I've achieved nothing, I'm going to do this with passion because that's who I am, and that's my identity, and nobody can take that away from me. And so the reason I bring that up is because, when you're going through an education of 4 years, especially after having been in the workforce for 3 years and having, freed yourself of any obligation to pursue further education, why would you go back if there's no guarantee of success? And I think the answer is every day that I'm here and that I'm going to class and that I'm coming home and reading for the next day of class, I'm in a very monotonous routine, but I can choose to think of it as two different tasks. I could think of it as 4 years of doing something very monotonous, where if I don't get a guarantee at the end of the day that if I continue to do this task, that I'll be freed from this educational institution, or that Sisyphus will be freed from hell. Or I could think of it as, this is a task that has been assigned to me. And in my case, I actually got to choose it. I'm very lucky. And I'm going to pursue that task with the utmost conviction and passion, because it's actually something that is part of my identity. Then that makes life a lot easier, and it makes life a lot more fun. So this goes back to my third point, which was always try to have the most positive attitude that you can. Don't let anyone get you down, and keep doing what you're doing with a passion, because that is the only way, I think, to be happy. And if you're only doing things because it might get you something in the future, it might help you achieve or accomplish something in the future, you're right, there is no guarantee of that. And so you shouldn't do it for that. You should do it because you enjoy it for its own sake. And if it happens to have kind of an external benefit of being able to provide you financial success or fame and fortune or whatever you seek, then that's great. But you should enjoy the thing you're doing itself. That's my final takeaway for all of you. So I know I've talked for a long time. I appreciate you all giving me your ears and your patience. And I'm very, very happy to have been given this opportunity. So again, the 4 lessons, I know I'm beating it into your heads, but if you don't remember anything, try to remember 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 of these lessons today, which is 1, pursue the things that are at the cross section of things that give you energy and things that you are good at. 2, be proactive about gathering information, introspecting, taking the time to ask yourself, is this really right for me? And then pivoting, changing if you need to. And then the 3rd lesson was having a positive attitude. In fact, trying to have the most positive attitude amongst your group of peers will go a long way. And then finally, prior preparation at all times will prevent poor performance. And that's something I stole from Tony Robbins. So if I can leave you with those 4 Ps, then I will have done my job. I hope you all enjoyed this video. And if you have any follow-up questions, maybe Ms. Hovenkamp can send them to me via email. And instead of making another long, dreary video, I will maybe just send her the responses back via email. But otherwise, I wish you all the best of luck. Good luck with high school, getting into college. And then I hope you all have very, very bright futures in whatever you choose to do, whether it's business or otherwise. Thanks.